Hi guys, it's Kamil here. Welcome to the Lit Talk, a casual segment on my channel where I talk about what I read, am reading and what I'm planning on reading next. We had a few months break, mostly due to my international book project, during which I read and reviewed all 13 novels that were longlisted for that award. By the way, the playlist with Booker reviews will be linked in my description below, and I won't talk about those books today. I might have read just a few physical books in between reading Booker novels, but I listen to audiobooks while running, and therefore there will be quite a few titles overall. I think 21 that I want to cover today to catch up and clean the slate. Additionally, taking into account that I don't want this video to take an hour, I will do something that I never do, and that is to try limiting my comments regarding any given title to just 1 or 2 sentences. And today we will talk only about the books I read or listened to, which already amounts to that 21 books. So there will be no currently reading section and there will be no to be read section in this video. Okay? Now, let's go ahead. What I've read. Physical books. Dead Souls, written by Nikolai Vasilievich Gogol. I've read 2 parts, the first one and the second part that is actually unfinished. I loved the exquisite humor and colorful depiction of morally degenerate Chichkov, the main character of the novel, and the commentary regarding Russian middle class of the first half of the 19th century was fascinating. While I was preparing myself to review longlisted for International Booker Prize Serotonin by Michel Houellebecq, I read his Platform, published in 2001. Platform is a typical for Houellebecq story of a hedonistic and self-absorbed middle-aged guy, and regardless of the fact that I was positively surprised with some of observations, at the end of the day, this is a book that comes too close for my taste to glorifying sex tourism. Native Son by Richard Wright. Putting to one side some absurd elements of the plot, the first one being the mode of getting rid of the body of the victim, this is a brilliant depiction of the dark outcomes of systemic racism, written in such a gripping way that one cannot put it down, even if they are a bit anxious to turn the page. Your Face Tomorrow by Javier Marías, that I read in Polish. Marías is one of those authors that are very hard to categorize. This novel can be described as an intellectual spy novel, for the lack of better term, but it is also a highbrow meditation on the motivations behind our actions. It's all of that and more, and I was blown away by it. The English Patient by Michael Ondaatje. Yes, I have finally read it. And even though the meticulous and poetic writing of Ondaatje sometimes carries a bit too much melodrama for my taste, I still believe this is one of the most accomplished novels. I also read Apeirogon by Colum McCann, longlisted for regular Booker Prize 2020, and although lately there's been a bit of negative commentary regarding various Irish writers writing about the stories they are not a part of, or their ancestry is not a part of, this is a very compassionate, brilliantly structured novel based on real-life events and blessed by the 2 protagonists, the life this novel depicts. I was very much impressed. I recorded a full-length review of this one that I will link down in the box below. Now, I have notes on Camp by Susan Sontag. I picked it up when I was reading Sontag's biography by Benjamin Moser. The biography is currently on hold as far as my reading of it is considered. Notes on Camp, though, the groundbreaking for Susan Sontag's career essay from the 60s, didn't age much, I believe, and is still quite stimulating. No Signal Area by Robert Perisic. I have finished it only yesterday and I am still processing it, but it was such a positive surprise. Fantastic portrait of the aftermath of Balkan Wars without the weight of any particular nationality, as we have no idea in which former Yugoslavian country the novel takes place, nor what's the nationality of the sea of characters populating the pages of this novel. But it is also probably the best I've seen depiction of the countries undergoing the transformation to the free market and all the pain it involves. And add to that very emotionally intelligent depiction of male-female dynamics, and you have No Signal Area. There are also some flaws, obviously, but I'll talk more about those during my video review of this novel. And that gets us to the part titled Books I'm Running With. For those of you being new here, I run at least every second day, generally more often. During work week I run 5k, then during the weekend I go on a bit longer runs, let's say 15 kilometers Saturday or Sunday. While running, I listen to audiobooks, so you can already imagine that one can get through quite a few of those while running that often, right? There's very few non-fiction titles that I listen to, so I'll start with those. And I will start with the most boring one. Get Things Done by David Allen. The Bible of productivity, right? I read it already a couple of years ago, and this time the problem with this book was even more prominent. You'd spend quite a few hours reading it or listening to it, while the main thoughts could be summarized easily on one page. There's nothing silly about what he suggests. Everything is sound. But save yourself some time and Google the summary. You'll lose nothing. Heavy by Casey Layman. It's a beautiful written, often heartbreaking, but I would think also empowering memoir of a Casey Layman's life as a young black boy in Mississippi up to his adulthood and academic work. The pivotal elements of this memoir are his relationship with the mother, who is an intellectualist but also a gambling addict. And the second main theme is systemic racism. I couldn't stop listening. I would walk around my house after running with headset on just to continue listening to it. It's so captivating. How to Do Nothing, Resisting the Attention Economy. This is one of the most talked about non-fiction recently, right? Jenny Odell, in a very comprehensive way, addresses the problems of attention capitalism and how our life is affected by various social media. What I like the most, though, is that she is not naive in her approach. She understands and addresses the fact that there are various factors that might limit our openness or our power to resist. And those depend obviously on our social status, financial independence, etc. And I really appreciated that. Overall, this is a very thought-provoking read. I definitely would recommend it. Now, fiction. Cleanness by Garth Greenwell and What Belongs to You by the same Garth Greenwell. I started from Cleanness, and even though there are some very graphic sexual scenes that most probably would be a deal breaker for a lot of people, the skills of a writer Greenwell demonstrates in his latest novel, Cleanness, are much more developed than in much more widely discussed debut of his, What Belongs to You, that I picked up soon after listening to Cleanness and was very much bored with it. Dominicana by Angie Cruz, a book that was often juxtaposed with American Dirt by Jenny Cummins. Dominicana being the good example of book written by own voices, in contrast to Cummins, who was accused of appropriation and scandalization of Latin experience. Dominicana is not a profound book, but it's a well-paced, engaging story of 15-year-old child's wife married off to a violent man by her parents in hope of better life in the USA. Swimming in the Dark by Tomasz Jedrowski. Set in the communist Poland, a story of love between two men, one not able to compromise himself and his values to adjust to the demands of society, and the other one compliant and focused on fitting in. It was fine, well written, but Giovanni's Room it is not, definitely not. By the way, Giovanni's Room also plays an important role in the narration of Swimming in the Dark and is often referred to in Jedrowski's novel, quite often being recalled. So that's obvious inspiration, right? Writers and Lovers by Lily King. I just love Lily King. Love her euphoria, love this one. She's just so witty. This is a book about the harsh realities of aspiring writer, a book about loss of a mother, but also a love story. And Lily King is so smart to tell a love story without making it feel like I'm once again forced to watch Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan movie. You know, it might not be a book I will be returning to over and over again, but it was such a pleasant, witty and stimulating experience, really. Queenie by Candice Carty-Williams, a story of a troubled 20-something Jamaican British girl. Don't expect anything close to the level of Toni Morrison, Zadie Smith, Bernardine Evaristo, the list could go on, just because this book popped up on various long lists. But it was interesting and emotionally charged enough to make me going. The comparison though to Bridget Jones used during marketing campaign is just ridiculous. This is a dark novel, this one. There's nothing Bridget Jones about it. Maybe a site of various dates that main character goes to. The Motion of the Body Through Space by Lionel Shriver. Oh my. Great on various levels. Shriver is a brilliant woman, no doubt about that. But it's also super problematic at times. Especially in the section where a black woman takes over the position of a manager of a main character's husband. That section was just racist. Just racist. What I talk about when I talk about Running by Haruki Murakami. I'm not a fan of Murakami's novel. There's a video on this channel where I talk about that a bit. I link it down below if you are interested to understand why. But what I talk about when I talk about running is not a novel but a memoir of a running life. And running is very close to me, so I won't be very objective. But I found it very inspirational and I loved listening to it, obviously, when running. I admire running regime Murakami was able to sustain for so many years. Chapeau bas. A History of the World in 10.5 chapters by Julian Barnes. Barnes is one of those writers that I love everything I pick up in terms of his current releases, but I hardly ever go back to read his backlist. Happy I finally did something in that area. I started reading it in physical copy, but then as I had some other reading obligations, I switched to an audio. This is a collection of short stories starting with alternative version of biblical Noah's Ark story, and then every other short story taking place in various historical periods would reference in certain aspects to that archetype of Noah's Ark. Often in a very surprising way, showing you the angles Noah's Ark could be interpreted from. You know, it's one of those books demonstrating admirable skill set given author has at his disposal, both in terms of narration building, structure building, and overall cultural proficiency, but it's not one that will ever become a household classic, as it's more of an intellectual and playful exercise rather than anything else. Okay guys, that's all. I covered 21 titles. Let me know what you thought of those books, if you read any of those. Obviously you did. And what are you currently reading? And I'll talk to you soon. And apologies for the long break. Talk to you soon. Have a brilliant week. Bye bye.